What's up guys, my name is Walter Fernandez and today we're going to be talking about this lens right here. This is the Canon nFD 50mm f1.4. This is a vintage lens, the most basic of vintage lenses. What do I mean by basic? It's very common. This is the kit lens from what I understand from back in the day. Wait, hold on, let me just take this out. Just like all nifty 50s, it's really tiny. There's been 4 versions of this lens. The first version was the Canon FD 50mm f1.4. Then the SC version, which stands for spectral coating, which is just some special coating to control the flaring a little bit. And then the third version, which is the most sought after version, the Canon FD 50mm 1.4 SSC, which is super spectral coating. That's the most sought after version of this lens, and this would be the fourth one, the nFD version. No SC, SSC, whatever thing. I think the nFD versions are better for me, and let me tell you why. So this lens actually has the same super spectral coating as the SSC, but they didn't write it because they were done with it. It was not a special thing anymore, so they just didn't write it in all the other nFD lenses. But all the nFD lenses, if I'm not mistaken, every single nFD lens has the super spectral coating, which just, again, they're just removing, like they're trying to compress the, they're trying to control the flare in some way, and that's pretty much it. And a little better image quality, I guess. Now, what are the difference between all these 4 versions? The first 3 versions, including the SSC one, they use a different mount. They use the FD mount, but they have a different locking system. They use this breech lock system, which kind of like you kind of have to put your camera in the right spot in place, and then you kind of have to turn a screw on it. I don't have a problem with those lenses, like with the breech lock mounts, but I know a lot of people like hate that locking mechanism. They say it's really difficult, especially when you're on the go. It's really difficult to take it on and off without like they'll have a lot of trouble with it. These are built similar to the ones that we're more used to on the Canon, Sony, Nikon system, which is the modern SLR versions where you just like push it in and then you kind of turn it to lock. And in most people's opinions, it's a better system, but I do not have a problem with that because I think they're fine. But the reason why I have this one is because it's much lighter. A part of the reason why the SSC version is also more sought after is because those 3 lenses are they're built a little better, if you can say that. They're just built a little tougher. They're all metal construction. So the fact that it's made more from plastic makes it a little bit less sturdy than the others, but I mean, if you use a lens like a normal human being and don't drop it and stuff, you'd be fine. I've never had a problem with this. Plus, I like that it's small because I like to use this with smaller cameras, like my Canon M100 over here, as well as my SLRs, like my A1, AE1. Those are bigger cameras, but they're kind of like, they're not heavy. When you put a lens that's really heavy in front, it makes the camera really top heavy, and those cameras are not, strictly speaking, ergonomic. That it kind of just makes the experience a little less pleasing when your camera's kind of like constantly dropping. I've gotten used to it now, especially using some other lenses from the FD system on my FD cameras, but I really like the size and weight of this lens. Now, one thing a lot of people misunderstand about these vintage lenses is that a lot of them are fully manual lenses. This is not a fully manual lens. So Canon has had a couple of lens mounts, a history of like changing the lens mounts every couple of years, but this mount has an automatic function. This aperture ring right here on Canon FD cameras, A1, the AE1, the AL1, AV1, AT1, and the T50, T70, T80, T90, all those cameras will be using these FD mount lenses, which allows you to shoot in shutter priority for these cameras. So it is a manual focusing lens, so you gotta focus everything manually. I wouldn't say it's difficult to use these lenses manual focus. I know it can be a lot like it could seem like a daunting task for us who are used to the autofocus systems in the newer cameras, but I can assure you that you'll get the hang of it fairly quickly. What you gotta understand is these lenses are not focus by wire lenses. It's all mechanical, and like They have like really big focus throws to get that focus just right. And yeah, what you gotta understand is these lenses are built for manual focus, so they're built really well, and you'll actually have a good time in manual focusing them. They're not like the modern autofocus lenses where like the manual focus is always like the second choice. When you can't like autofocus, that's when you try the manual focus something. So next we're going to be talking about image quality. If you're familiar with any of these vintage lenses, the craze about the vintage lens lately because of the ease of use on the mirrorless cameras nowadays, you get two kind of school of thoughts with these vintage lenses. You get people who are kind of saying these are the sharpest lenses ever, they're really high quality lenses. I disagree. And then you have the other side which says that these are soft focus lenses, which I also disagree. These lenses are pretty sharp, but it's also at the same time kind of soft. Like, what I mean by that is it has this kind of like soft roll off from them that modern lenses don't get. Like you've heard people say like there's this like digital edge that they want to get rid of with the modern lenses. This one kind of sits in between them. It's not super soft, it's not super sharp, it's kind of just in between them. The flaring, like, it's not only from a bright light source, it's also from like highlights on like shirts and stuff. So like at the side of my face, if there's like a bright light here, it's gonna kind of bloom here as well. And you can see like it's really apparent on this lens. So that's why you get that kind of like soft roll off with the focus, which I find that really pleasing, especially for skin tones. Now it sounds like I'm just describing a Promise filter. So other than that, I don't think you'd use this lens for very clinical results if you're trying to film an ad with like a really refined edges or like look really modern. This has a very, very distinct characteristic to its look. It does look old, it does look dated. So if you're shooting period pieces, it will be perfect if your thing is set in the 1980s. But other than that, it's not great for modern production, which requires clinical looking images. Okay, let's talk about compatibility. Which camera can you use this lens with? Obviously, you're going to be able to use this with the FD compatible cameras, which are like the, as I mentioned, A1, AE1, AL1, blah, blah, blah. You can also use this on FL cameras, so cameras with the FL mount. They have, from what I understand, they have the same mount. It's just that they don't have the automatic function. So if you put on the automatic function, it wouldn't work as an automatic lens. But that's not really interesting. I guess what you really want to know is whether these can fit on the modern EF cameras or the modern RF cameras. You can fit it on the RF cameras. Unfortunately, you can't fit it on the EF cameras. And the reason for that is the flange distance. Now, flange distance is the distance between the back of the lens to the sensor. The EF flange is a little longer than the flange distance for the FD mount. You'll be able to fit it on with a adapter, but yeah, it won't be able to focus to infinity. There is an adapter with a corrective glass there. I've not tried it, and most people have said that it tends to degrades the quality of the lens a lot, and you'll probably hate it. You won't even want to use it after. You'll be able to fit this on mirrorless cameras because their flange distance are really, really small. So for instance, the RF mounts, the EFM mount, the Sony E mount, Canon Z mount, and they would be able to work perfectly as designed. Although you will lose the auto function for the aperture right here. You would have to just turn it every time you want to change the aperture of the lens. So yeah, overall, I do love this lens. This was the first vintage lens of many that I have. And a big part of the reason why I have all these vintage lenses is obviously because it's cheap. And also it's nice for me to be able to shoot film photos that are not of just kit lens, kind of like every photo from a I can say probably like 90% of photographers on A1s, they never get the 50mm off the camera, and that's nothing wrong with that. I just wanted something that would kind of look different, as well as being able to use these lenses to kind of match my film photography with my digital photography. I would have like one step reduced when I try and match my film photos together with my digital photos. So yeah, I'll be leaving some image samples at the end of this video. If you want to check out more of these images, you can head over to my Instagram, which is linked down below in the description. So yeah, like this video if you found this interesting or it helped you in any way. subscribe if you want to see more videos like this. Comment down below if you want to see more vintage lenses, because I've got a couple of these that I plan on making videos of. I only have FD lenses, so if you have a specific FD lens you're not sure of, and if I have it, just comment down below and I will make a video on it. So that's all for this video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!